FutureCanoe is going to be remaking a recipe that we remade last year. So let's see how it turns out for him. Because for us, well, I won't spoil it for you, but you need to see that video after watching this one. If you're new to the channel, guys, my name is Makinson. I've been cooking for many, many years in many different countries as well. So if you do happen to enjoy my recipes and my recipe videos, then don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so you don't miss out on any future content. Now, let's get started.
This is an update of a video I posted a year ago about how I try to make New York-style pizza in a home kitchen.
This is a video showing my attempt to make a New York-style pizza in a home kitchen.
Well, at least we're going to be making a New York-style pizza in a New York home kitchen. FutureCanoe's in New York, so it kind of fits.
Yes, I normally make my pizza dough in a stand mixer, but I will never cook in a stand mixer on the internet again.
To that, all I have to say is...
Yeah! 2.5 cups of warm water.
2.5 cups or 600 milliliters of warm water.
Then some sugar, a tablespoon. Some people might say that's a lot.
And that's why I don't talk to them anymore. The sugar will not only help the yeast bloom, but also help it brown better.
Now this is a big debate with a lot of home chefs and, well, with a lot of other pizza chefs as well. Do you add sugar to your dough? Yes or no? It's not needed to add extra sugar to the dough, although if you are trying to make a quick dough instead of waiting 8 to 12 or more hours for it to rise, sugar will speed up the process because the yeast will feed off of it.
In goes a teaspoon of active dry yeast.
In goes a teaspoon of active dry yeast.
Give that yeast a chance to rehydrate and to eat some of the sugar in there and to be fruitful and multiply.
While the yeast is carrying out their Old Testament fulfillment, I realized the amount of water in his video doesn't look right. So earlier he said
2.5 cups of warm water.
So mine is exactly 600 milliliters, as you know how precise I am with ingredients. But this does not look like 2.5 cups of water. This is like the moisture level when he tells the story versus the actual level.
Now this is one of those things that I also caught when we were reviewing and making this recipe. Now, I think Adam was just putting the numbers out there so people have them, and he was using a little bit of water to help show the amount of yeast that's actually going to be blooming. Then again, it's a little difficult to say because at the end, all the measurements were a little off.
This is called blooming, and it is not necessary. The dough will rise regardless. The reason people do this is to check to see if their yeast is still alive. And guess what? This was dead.
My mixture is starting to look like the breeding grounds of thousands of mosquito eggs, so I'm just gonna assume it's full of life.
So let's try this again with fresh yeast. You wait a few minutes, and then here's my favorite part. I am not speeding up this footage. This is real time. I love that.
Well, I'm also not speeding up this footage. But I'm not loving it. Why isn't it doing anything?
Senator, I don't know.
Let's try speeding it up now and see if we can notice anything.
Short version. Not dead.
Now, when you're going to be using yeast to make any type of dough, it is important to follow the instructions. Hopefully they're good instructions and a good recipe. Depends on who made the recipe, no?
This one is a broccoli orange chicken. For the sauce, you take chicken broth. I usually use chicken broth because it's a chicken dish, but they gave us beef broth. So let's just say any broth.
When have you ever read cookbook and step 1 it say, oh, use anything you like?
But if you are having to substitute with having to use either fresh yeast or dry yeast, and the recipe calls for the opposite, you need to make sure that you have the correct measurements for the difference because it's not the same. It's also important to make sure that the water is not too cold and not too hot. You need something that's more of an ambient temperature, tepid water, something that when you touch it, you're not going to burn yourself and it's not cold because the yeast is a living organism, and if you put it in cold water, what's it going to do? Not much.
2 tablespoons or something. Some pros don't use oil in their dough. Again, I think that it helps the crust brown in a home oven.
If there are any pizza chefs watching, is what Adam say is true? When you add olive oil to it, it will help make the dough crust when you mix the olive oil into the dough instead of just adding it to the final product.
I guess 2 tablespoons of olive oil. If you follow me on Instagram or TikTok, you'll remember what I did to it. If you don't, let's revisit this clip. I learned a trick on TikTok to add character to this product.
know, the sad thing is that some people will actually think that's what extra virgin olive oil means.
Now flour. I use bread flour, which has a higher protein content than all-purpose flour.
I'm using whole wheat bread flour because I actually tried to get the right ingredients this time, but I failed to read the whole label.
5 cups by volume. Sure, that's not an accurate way of measuring flour, but this is just a starting point. I'm going to add more flour by feel as we need.
Whole wheat flour is not the same as bread flour. Yeah, it will also affect the flavor. I use Caputo pizza flour, which is around the red label, around 13% protein per 100 grams. And it is very similar to Adam's. And well, I won't spoil it for you, but let's see how this turns out for him because he's using whole wheat.
So to balance out the whole wheatness, I'm just gonna do half of this and half all-purpose flour.
I usually just bring that together with a spatula or something, then get my hand in there and knead.
I usually just get in there with my Ligma fork and commit to it.
When it gets so sticky that I can't really work with it, I'll sprinkle on a little bit more flour.
Now keep in mind, if you are going to be using whole wheat, you may need to split it like he's doing because it can be a little too dense, a little too heavy. If you've ever used whole wheat with making bread, like 100% whole wheat, and you compare that to just using white flour, you'll notice the difference between the two. Also, one little tip, anytime that you're measuring out flour, it is very important to weigh the flour by weight. To use a scale and weigh it by weight, not to measure it by taking a cup and digging into the flour, because you will compact the flour and it can be more by weight instead of the actual amount that you measure by volume.
As little as possible though. I really prefer wetter doughs these days.
But is this something you'd prefer? It looks like a really healthy meal for a horse. I guess even though my hands are incapable of getting anything wet, the Ligma fork does. So we'll add a little bit of flour at a time to make it look more like a dough.
Again, this is one of the reasons why it's very important to follow a good recipe, because if you have just a recipe and you follow it to the T, and you even try to get the exact same type of flour, you measure everything to be exactly the same, and you end up with a product that is drastically different, it goes to show you that maybe there is a bit of an inconsistency with the recipe. In other words, the bloody recipe is off.
Any chance you guys think this is ready?
The test to see if it's ready is to see if you can stretch out a patch of it really thin without it tearing. That is not ready yet.
Let's see if we can spread it really thin without tearing. Oh, I guess it's not ready yet.
All right, I've kneaded this for 10 minutes and now I can stretch it thin without it tearing.
So it's been 45 minutes of constantly adding flour to my mixture. I've added about a full cup and a half. And this is what it looks like now. Kind of looks like something Spider-Man would fight. And after careful consideration, I've decided that this is ready.
Now, I won't spoil everything for you if you haven't seen my recipe, my remake recipe of this, but I had similar issues with this recipe and I was trying to follow it exactly, not trying to modify it in any way. I ended up having to add a hell of a lot more flour just to try to get the same consistency that Adam has in the video.
This is enough dough for 4 home oven sized pizzas. So I've got 4 containers here, big enough for the dough balls to double in size.
I only have enough dough for 1 pizza for me, so I'm gonna use 1 container to put all of it in.
I'm pouring a little olive oil into each.
Pour a little canola oil into it.
Then what I like to do is use the ball like a paintbrush to oil the inside of the bowls. In the process, the balls themselves get good and covered in oil too.
Oh my God.
The balls themselves get good and covered in oil too.
This is what happens when you watch too many Uncle Roger videos and when you have little jokes here and there, because it just sounded wrong.
We'll first transfer the dough into the container. As you can see, the dough is very pliable at this moment. And then we'll use the dough as a paintbrush to get the oil on the sides of the container as well as the dough itself. And you might wonder why my dough is sticking to my hand a lot. That is probably because I used canola oil instead of olive oil.
Cover them up, and then you could either rise them on the table for a couple hours and then bake them, or what I do is throw them straight into the fridge.
I'm just gonna rest it on the countertop for 2 hours because waiting overnight for pizza is basically torture.
True it is. Normally when you make pizza dough, you don't want to make it ahead of time. You want to eat it like now, or at least I do at home. The best thing to do though is to make a big batch of pizza dough and portion it out. That way you make it ahead of time for the rest of the week. And if your freezer's big enough, you could even roll out your pizza dough like completely roll it out into flat discs, put parchment in between the doughs, put them on a sheet tray, and stick them in the freezer. This is also another option. And that way, when you want a pizza, you just take it out of the freezer, add a little sauce to it, make sure that the oven's hot, and you're done.
Sauce. The New York style pizza that I'm talking about here is a street food. It's cheap. It's generally made with canned sauce products.
That's what I want to hear, because my superpower is summoning tomato cans out of nowhere. I only have whole tomatoes in here, so to make it nice and smooth for the sauce, I'm gonna have to crush it myself. I don't have a blender, so I'm gonna use this special technique called cutting the shit out of it. This is how smooth it should look after applying the technique for about 10 minutes.
He's also using what it looks to be San Marzano tomatoes. They're a very, very juicy plum tomato. It's a variety that is, well, designated. It has to be San Marzanos if they're grown, I believe, near Mount Vesuvius. The trade-off, though, is that with all the volcanic soil around the volcano, that soil is very nutrient dense, and it affects the flavors with a lot of the tomatoes and the other ingredients that they grow in that region, which makes the tomatoes have a wonderful, but absolutely wonderful flavor.
Do put in a pinch of sugar, some dried oregano, and a lot of olive oil. I love fresh oil in pizza sauce, but you do you.
I'ma do me and add in sugar, salt, oregano, and a lot of black pepper. Ligma fork it till smooth, and I have to say this is the most pleasant sauce making experience I've had in a long time.
Sugar, sugar, and more sugar. The thing is, if you're using like San Marzanos, you don't need to be adding more sugar to them. It's important to know what type of tomatoes you're using, because some tomatoes are more acidic than others, some are sweeter than others. Like if you're using cherry tomatoes, cherries tend to be very sweet, so you don't need to add even more sugar to make them even sweeter. What I'm surprised is that Adam didn't add a little bit of vinegar to this, because he loves vinegar.
Maybe a quarter cup of balsamic vinegar.
Balsamic vinegar!
Put in a little bit more balsamic. That really brightens it back up again after it's been in the freezer for a while.
Adam likes vinegar, doesn't he?
Very wet dough, and the cold helps keep it workably stiff.
Well, the cold never helps me keep stiff. It does the opposite, actually. As you can see here, my dough's trying to escape its container like how hustlers escape the matrix. I'm gonna work on the dough on top of a silicone mat. I love it because silicone is actually a human's best friend, because it can easily turn into useful tools in and out of the kitchen.
At home, it does help to divide the pizza dough up into smaller pieces before you allow it to rise, because if you make a lot, it may be a little more difficult to portion that out if you don't have like a big kitchen, you don't have a lot of space. So if you do it before, it like doubles or triples in size, it may be a little easier.
Nice job, team.
In case you can't tell, the dough is still a little bit on the wet side, so we're gonna fold it a couple more times and divide it up into 4 even pieces. After we put 3 of them in the fridge, we'll start kneading 1 of them. This process will probably help the gluten develop even more. Gluten sensitivity is just like cryptocurrency. I don't really understand anything, but my friends who have them can't seem to shut up.
Everyone seems to have a few friends in crypto, and everyone in crypto says that it's fantastic. Me personally, I'm not in crypto. It doesn't mean that I'm against it. I'm not. It's just that I'd rather research companies instead.
Put a plate on there and then some flour on the plate.
Putting a plate on the pizza peel and then some flour on the plate.
Take it out while deflating it as little as possible and then get it coated in flour.
I shake the dough off as carefully as possible and then get it coated in flour.
And yeah, I know how to toss pizzas in the air. I still prefer to just do the gravity stretch method.
You want to grab the side of the dough and keep rotating it while letting gravity pull it down. The gravity method is the best way to shape a pizza. It's heartwarming to see how humanity utilizes Isaac Newton's greatest discovery.
It is also a little easier to do if you use the gravity method, but if you want to practice at home and you don't make a mess, then you can try to spin it. Little by little, you can try. Yeah, you don't need to lift it off up into the air and spin it in the air. You can just try a little bit with your thumbs, put it on the back of your thumbs, and move the dough around left to right or right to left.
No, it does not give you a perfect circle like centrifugal force does, but guess what? I don't want a perfect circle. I want an oblong.
Well, I want a perfect circle, so I'm gonna do a bunch of these tiny pinches on the edges to try to make it look good, just like how my boss micromanages me. Now we're gonna pour on some sauce and spread it out with the most versatile versatile kitchen tool, the Ligma fork. But you have to remember, this is a pretty thin pizza. Too much sauce is gonna make it a little soggy. So I'm gonna take some of the sauce away.
That bloody Ligma fork's versatile, isn't it? You should probably get that patented and start selling it.
Sprinkle on a little grated Parmesan under the mozz layer.
Now I'm gonna grate some grana padano on the bottom layer, cause I can't really tell the difference between this and Parmesan anyways.
If you're on a budget, it doesn't matter. There are types of good grana padano which taste really good, but the flavor is not the same. Heck, if you can get pecorino, get pecorino, but not pecorina. That no.
Part skim low moisture mozz is very easy to find, but the whole milk version tastes a lot better. There is this whole milk low moisture mozz from Walmart. It is not a great cheese, but it's the right style. Beware of this cheese from Polio, which a lot of people like for pizza, but this cheese they sell retail is not what I would call a true low moisture cheese.
In Adam's video, he goes into further detail in explaining the differences in these mozzarella cheeses. To sum it up, the key to making the perfect New York style pizza is to get the type of mozzarella cheese that's the easiest and the most accessible to you.
This is true, and for me, the easiest type of mozzarella to get is actually fresh mozzarella from Italy, because I live close to Italy. And of course, over here, I don't have Walmart, so I can't go to Walmart to get what he's getting.
You need a hot surface to bake on, and I have recently switched from a stone to a steel.
I switched from a good-looking pizza stone to a nearly destroyed one.
You want to get your oven as hot as it goes, though. For me, that's 550 Fahrenheit on the convection roast setting.
Mine only goes up to 475, but if it can burn my finger, it can cook a pizza.
Adam's oven can get up to 550 Fahrenheit. Not bad. A lot of home ovens don't get up quite that high. My new oven in this place came with the house, so it's a little older and it's a little smaller. It's not an actual normal size oven. It's teeny, so I can't put a turkey in it or anything big for a roast. Fun.
A little shimmy just to make sure it's gonna release, and then shimmy it out onto the steel.
After an hour of heating up this pizza stone, we'll bring our pizza over, shimmy it a little bit, and shimmy onto the stone.
This is why it is important to make sure that when you roll out your pizza is not bigger than the stone. And if we take a quick look here, when he added the pizza to the stone, you didn't hear any sizzle and you didn't see any smoke or anything come off. So it kind of looks like the pizza oven is not quite up to temp. And you want that if you want to get a lot of color on the bottom. Not to burn it, but just a little bit of color.
A pizza this thin in an oven this hot cooks really fast, 6 or 7 minutes.
After about 3 minutes, we'll open the oven and flatten out the pizza.
I usually grab it with tongs and pull it straight out onto a cooling rack.
Since my oven's a little lower in temperature, I baked it for 12 minutes. It's looking pretty good now. So I'll pull it out with a pair of tongs onto a cooling rack. My pizza stone gets dirtier every time I use it. Is this supposed to be like that? Let me know in the comments.
Well, some may say that you're actually supposed to clean your pizza stone, and others say that you're not supposed to clean it because all the leftover food that sticks to the pizza stone with all the times that you heat up the oven after that burns will just add more flavor. Who knows?
Pizza this size, a good old chef's knife is a perfectly adequate tool, and it's safer. It gives you more control.
Why fly first class to Italy when I have this pizza at home? I think the most obvious problem is that the crust is a little off-colored, probably because my dough was too wet, but the fact that the dough worked is a miracle in itself. I have a feeling that for the first time ever, you guys on Instagram are gonna be proud of me. Adam uses a knife for the most control, but I think the best way to cut a pizza is with a pair of scissors.
Why does it seem like a lot of people hate watch FutureCanoe just to see what he's going to mess up and then comment on it? I mean, come on, he's trying his best. Or maybe it's just satire.
Before we continue, we're gonna give it a sound check real quick. It doesn't look that brown, but just like my face, it is pretty crusty. When you hold it up like this, it's not dripping any oil, which is a good sign. But the biggest problem of this pizza is the thickness. It's pretty much my personal preference in everything else except for pizza. When you flip it, I guess we can spot another problem of the bottom not being charred enough. But I'm just gonna blame it on the oven temperature.
Look at the thickness of the dough. He used too much. First of all, too much dough. He should have rolled it out a lot thinner, and that is just too thick. As for the color, his pizza stone was probably cold. Adam says that you need to heat it up for at least an hour, maybe more, maybe half a day. You don't need to heat it up for an hour. You just need to heat it up to the point where it is the same temperature as the oven, which could be sooner, and then you add the pizza to it. It needs to be hot.
Finally, it's time to taste and rate it 1 through 10.
Damn.
My pizza doesn't even taste as good as the dollar slices of the streets of New York. I think my biggest mistake was that I overshaped it with my finger. I should have just stretched it with the gravity method to get it as thin as possible. I also overloaded the sauce so the dough became even more soggy. Adam's recipe is easy to follow and very applicable in the home kitchen, but my execution today was a 5 out of 10.
Overall, I don't think that FutureCanoe did that bad, but even though he's saying that Adam's recipe is like applicable for home kitchen, if you compare Adam's recipe to an actual pizza chef's recipe, more than likely the pizza chef's recipe, you're going to get it right. Maybe not the first time, but at least the second. Whereas Adam's, it's never consistent. No. Oh no.
When you roll it up like this, you get a little bit of crust and toppings with each bite you take.
And
Am I a
ranch
genius?
on top
Let me
of
know in the
it.
comments. So far, every
Oh
pizza
my
attempt on
goodness,
this
who
channel
eats
has been
ranch
an L,
with
so
pizza?
We'll definitely revisit this concept later. In the meantime, I want to do a video where I make and review all of your struggle meals. If you don't know what that is, a struggle meal is just the food you make for yourself when you have nothing to eat at home and you're one step away from having sleep for dinner. An example would be a hot dog on a piece of Wonder Bread. Just send the recipe or a picture to me on Instagram and then I'll make it, try it, and rate it 1 through 10.
Long story short, I don't think FutureCanoe did that bad, considering that I've already tried this recipe, and like Jamie's recipe is, it needs to be heavily modified. But thinking about it though, struggle meals would be a good idea, especially today with all the food prices going up. Let me know guys down below what your struggle meals are. Send me a DM on Instagram or email, just so I can actually read it, because sometimes I don't always see every comment. In any case, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did and you had a laugh, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so you don't miss out on any future content. And if you hit the like button, it really helps the video out, which means a lot to me. Be sure to check this next video coming out here. Check out our Adam video with remaking this recipe as well, and I will see you again soon. Until then, take care.